Right. Hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. So bonus points to everybody here as we're starting. We are going to be recording, so if anybody is joining a little bit later or wasn't able to make it at this time, we'll be able to catch back up later. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And let's get it moving. So please continue to keep microphones muted and but open up your chat box. So feel free to dialogue and make this a little bit interactive, and we'll go from there. All right. So let me see. So I like to sometimes oddly begin even at the ending and end at the beginning. So first things first, thank you for being here. You know, and it may seem an odd thing to start with, but it's really important to me. You know, we are here taking time out of our day, sharing this time, this conversation together, because there's something important here to have, and something important to have. It's part of the conversation. And so thank you for taking the time to learn about yourself, to learn about the people that you love and work with on a daily basis. And I am honored and happy to be here with you tonight. So for anybody that's not as familiar with me, I have been a licensed psychologist for about 25 years. I have a specialty in gambling disorder, although I have worked in a wide range of practices. There was a time when I was the special assistant to the secretary for the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs in Pennsylvania. So this is, did the work to steer the best practices for the state. Written a number of books out there. You can always catch one of those along the way. And other thing that's real important is my contact information. I am one that it's a dialogue. And so even though right now I'm kind of talking to you, please, dialogues are important, and the back and forth is valuable. So feel free to chat, ask questions, whatever, et cetera, along the way. So there's an old story of the two fish, and the one fish comes up to the other fish and says, you know, how's the water? And the other fish says, what's water? You know, this is kind of like what it was like for me when I first started thinking about stress. You know, people said, well, blah, 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 stress and anxiety. And I said, well, what's that? You know, when you are living in it, breathing in it, swimming in it all day long, it's really easy to kind of fall asleep and not realize, or worse, think that that's the norm and that's the expectation, as if that's what everybody is and does. So it's really important to remember that that is not the norm. And so how to kind of wake up and step outside of that a little bit. It's really important. And so this is where we kind of begin our story of how do we begin to recognize what's been going on, what we've been living in, and how do we begin to make some changes in that. And so this, in my piece of this story, it started many years back, and I've learned a lot of tools over the course of the way, and I've really distilled a lot of that down to what we're going to talk about tonight. And so really tried to make it so that it will be as easy and useful, and I'm going to try to teach from the perspective of principles. You know, some folks know me from my role as professor and these types of attitudes. So there will be a little bit more, in this kind of setting, there'll be a little bit more, let's talk about the principles, let's talk about the how-to, let's try and make it useful and applicable rather than just kind of lecturing facts and figures, if you will. So real important to ask ourselves, this is where we always start in life, how's the water for me? You know what I mean? Is there a lot of stress around me today or not? And that may be part of the reason why you're here. And what's the relationship between stress and anxiety, which we'll talk a little bit about along the way. I also tend to talk a little bit fast, so feel free along the way. Stop me, ask me questions along the way. I'm always open to those sorts of things. So, stress management, pop quiz. If you feel comfortable sharing, take a second to throw out into the chat what challenges or do stress and anxiety cause to you? What's the trouble points that you want to make sure that we try to get to tonight? And is there anything in particular that you want me to cover? Because the more I know just a little bit about what you're looking for, the more I can begin to help to manage that and steer some of the conversations to that. Okay, so I see work and tests. Oh my gosh, yes. So you have the tests, which are that pressure, that acute kind of thing that you study, and then it's over. And then you've also got work, which is that kind of chronic day-to-day types of process. Excellent. We'll begin to talk about that. Stress with clients at work. Absolutely. So one of the challenges sometimes that we have is, my gosh, I care about folks and I want to do my best, and I didn't learn all the right answers all the time. And so how do I begin to trust myself to manage that caseload, to manage that back-to-back, and manage that the busyness of work? Okay, excellent. Okay, so one more question. Crazy question, because I'm like that. If all your stress went away in the next hour, how will the next 24 hours look and feel differently? Think about it for a second. So whatever brought you here, you would think he was dead. Now, so you see how that fish analogy works. You know, obviously, you know, we expect that this is the way it is. So, wouldn't know what to do with the free time. Absolutely. So we begin to start to see the sharp difference that starts to build out about stress versus de-stressing. You know, what do I do when I'm not in that pressured, tense kind of model? And I put to us kind of the conversation, the question that it may be that we want to have these things and that's why we're here. We want to get to something sometimes beyond stress. And so this question is really important, because as you can begin to articulate what it is that you want after the stress is gone, the better you can begin to get there. The better you can stay motivated to do what you want to do to get to those places. Stress myself out by feeling unproductive. Oh my gosh, yes. So there's this other type of stress that's like that internal mental pressure. I should be doing something. I should be doing something. So, so you guys are perfect. You're right on track, and I didn't pay you to say this, you know. So without knowing what's coming up next, so that's awesome. So we're going to talk more about that. Exactly that. So this is the trickiness of the stress process, and how to begin to think about that as life goes on. All right. So over the course of the next hour, I'm going to be a little ambitious. So how can I begin to recognize and change the stress in my life? And what is stress? Yes, the miracle question is a great way of angling things. There's a bunch of related pieces there, and a lot of ways to ask that question to get to the same kinds of point, which is tied closely to all of these goals. Sorry, I'm skipping around a bit as I try and keep up with the chats. So what is stress? What is the stress killer myth? And what are the 3 keys to stress management? Everything's got to be in 3, you know, it's one of those things. And what is the stress management tool that I wish I had learned earlier, and why? So these are some of the things that I had planned. If there are any other questions or things that you would like to add to the agenda, I will certainly looking to save a little bit of time at the end for some questions, but I can certainly weave things in along the way if there's something else that you want me to try to get into. And that said, if we could reach each of these things in the next hour or so, would you be happy with that? Would you walk away feeling like you've got what you needed for tonight? Or is there anything else we want to try to get to? I'm flexible, I can work things in quickly and easily, so as part of ongoing discussions. All right, sounds good, sounds good. Yes, good. All right, excellent. So, pop quiz, one more thing of self-assessment, okay? So check it out here. This is not a statistically significant, standardized self-assessment test, okay? So I'll just say that for context. So, but do take a look, read through this list, and make a mental note for yourself. Which ones have you experienced? And if you want to do this later, or you're doing this later, taking a look at the PowerPoint, I would usually write down next to each one of them, rarely, sometimes, or often. So do I often have muscle tension in my shoulders, in my chest, in my belly? Do I rarely have weakness? Do I sometimes have heart palpitations? So it could be very different as you go down this list. So, but just think that through for yourself and check down each of these three lists. I'll give you just a second to read through them. And I think all of them are pretty clear, but if there's any that are not clear or what they mean, feel free to let me know. If anybody needs another couple of minutes, just yell at me. Otherwise, I'm going to start chatting a little bit again. As you're going through this, feel free to also throw a quick note in there. I'm not going to ask you which ones you're yes or no's to, although you're welcome to share whatever you choose to share. But what I will say is one of the things that people will often jump at is what you can do at the end is start to count up how many offens you have in each column. You shouldn't have more than 3 offens total. Okay, so if you've already sitting there saying, oh my gosh, I got 15 offens, then don't worry, you're not about to die, but it means you're exactly the right place. We want to sit down and we want to talk about this a little bit. Now, there are dozens of different self tests and stress tests out there. So why do I pick this particular type of a style? And I'll tell you why. For a lot of reasons, actually. There is this particular style is a really good one to capture the issue that stress affects a whole wide range of everything. It really is the how's the water kind of an analogy. It's kind of like everything that we're living with all day long. Okay, so begin to think though, to personalize it, and this is why I say feel free to share whatever you want to share or not, but think through or ask yourself the questions whether or not you share. What is, are there any themes in what you noticed? So for example, sometimes guys, we experience all these physical symptoms or behavioral symptoms, but we don't have a whole lot of the emotional symptoms, or vice versa. Or maybe I have one type and not another. So maybe I have a whole bunch of these symptoms, but I never thought about it as being connected to my anxiety or stress. So the challenge with stress is that it can cause or make worse a wide range of symptoms. One of the things that is unique, though, is that typically when I get stressed, I will be vulnerable and I will get the same type of symptom. So whichever ones you've marked off or taken a note that says, yes, I get this one an awful lot, that's probably the one that you will typically get again when you get stressed. So if I normally get indigestion, I will probably get an upset stomach again. Versus if I'm someone who bites my nails, I will probably start biting my nails again. And if I'm somebody who has high blood pressure, I won't suddenly start biting my nails. I will keep having my high blood pressure. Does that make sense? So our symptoms tend to be relatively similar over a period of time. So I'm going to think sideways once again, because I invite you to, let me explain why. So it's really important that when we're in the water, we tend to think about things the same way. If you walk out of this discussion thinking about things the exact same way again, we didn't do any good. You know what I'm saying? So one of my goals for you, and maybe I should write this on the goals list sometime too, is to begin to see the world just a little bit differently, because as you begin to see the world a little bit differently, as you approach it differently, you begin to manage it differently. Okay. So as I was starting to say, begin to think about this from a different perspective. So if your style is to get upset stomach, so you can begin to complain about how terrible it is. Oh, I must be stressed. I got that upset stomach again. Or you can begin to recognize your upset stomach as a reminder, as a warning sign that something's going off center in life. So all of a sudden, when you begin to think about it from this perspective, our symptoms can become our friends. Isn't that kind of crazy? So we can begin to think about our symptoms as our warning signs, so we can start to identify it and intervene with it before it becomes worse. Okay? So it's real important to try and recognize it and begin to practice through prevention before it becomes worse. Continue life through the perspective instead of just doing it a couple of times. Excellent question. How to begin to continue to look at life this way rather than just doing it a couple of times. Hold that thought for about 15 more minutes. We're going to continue to go through that. Going to get into the where do I go from here? About 15 minutes. Okay, great question. So the first part is catching this right now, saying, oh my gosh, I see it. I can see the world differently now. And so that is an excellent question. We're right on the how do we maintain that? Okay, how do we continue with this awareness? How do we stop from going back to sleep? Okay, all right. So I got to once in a while, I got to do the little teacher mode. So the stress response. What is this darn stress response thing? So the stress response was initially talked about by Hans Selye. So over a century ago, he identified the stress response as that fight or flight mechanism. So when I'm out there and I see a tiger, then all of a sudden, my body gears up to either fight the tiger or run away as fast as I can. Okay, so this is a stress response is there to protect me. A stress response is my friend to get me going and save my life, actually. So what's going to happen with my body to do this kind of stress response? And for those that like that sort of thing, this is the sympathetic nervous system. That the sympathetic sounds like it's a warm fuzzy, but this is the get you up and running kind of mode. So your body starts to physiologically do all the things that it needs to do to run. So for example, so your sugar and fat pours into the blood, so you get fast energy. Okay, your muscles get tense so that you can run. You start perspiring. Your heart rate starts racing. Breathing starts racing. All the sorts of things that will get you running as fast as you can in that fight and flight. Exactly. Okay. Everything that your body needs to do that gets geared up into the run. Okay. Now the focus can get hyper focused there, because I'm not thinking about all the possibilities and doing the processing and that frontal lobe stuff. I've moved down to the back to the lower brain, lower and back, mid, the limbic system, that emotional reactionary run, you know, almost, it's really loses some of that conscious control. So that's the next piece of the thing. So as our body turns on certain symptoms, certain mechanisms, it also turns off other systems that are not necessary for the fight or flight. Okay, so something to think about. So what systems does our body not need in the sense of the tiger? So for example, first one I just mentioned, frontal lobe. I don't need to sit and suddenly do calculus when I'm running away from the tiger. Turn off that brain, that cognitive thinking thing. You know what I'm saying? The next thing the body says is, you know, if you get scratched by the tiger, exactly, the frontal cortex, that if you get scratched by the tiger, I'm not going to get infected and die for days or weeks on end. Okay, so the body says, turn off that immune system. Okay, so the body also says, you know, that digestion thing, you know, that that turkey, leftover turkey dinner that you had. So, well, that's not going to be digested and turned into food and be valuable to you until long after you've run away from that tiger. So let's turn off the digestion. Now think about that for a second. Let's go back for 1 second here. Now let's look at this symptom checklist again for a second. Can you see how all those behavioral activations are tied right into that sympathetic nervous system? The heart palpitations, the high blood pressure, the indigestion, as well as the things that are turned off. Indigestion, constipation, you know, et cetera, getting colds. Okay, you begin to see how the chronic activation is pretty much what that stress response is. Now, our body is well designed for the stress response from the perspective of a tiger. So now I'm going to tie this back for a second. We talked before that, you know, I've got a test and then the test is over. That's how our bodies is designed for a stress response. It's going to turn on and then turn off again. It's going to turn on, I'm going to work really hard to study for tonight, and then I'm going to relax again. Our bodies weren't designed for that chronic work week, that work stress that came up. You know, so that process isn't what this is designed for. So it's kind of like flipping the stress switch on and then leaving it on for hours and days and weeks. Okay, so begin to think about it from another perspective. So if my risk factor was tension in the shoulders, and I get stressed and I get my tension in my shoulders and my shoulders go up around my ears. And so now and this is not just from a test, this is from work stress. So I'm doing this 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week. And now I'm stressed and I got my shoulders all up by my ears for 40 hours a week. Okay. Now, yes, exactly. I understand that. So we have this symptom that we can carry through for all this time. First off, now I've started to forget that my shoulders are up around my ears, and this just starts to feel normal for me, right? What do you think is going to happen after days, weeks, years of having my shoulders up near my ears? Okay. So when stress becomes chronic, would it be surprising if we start to develop symptoms in those areas that are chronically perturbed? Got it? So this is why stress particularly becomes problematic. It's fine for that fight or flight response for something that's a quick thing, but it was not intended to be a chronic strain, putting pressure on any one of these areas for a long time. If I'm studying for a test and I get irritable for an hour or two, and then I take the test and I'm relaxed again, you know, it wasn't fun being irritable, but you know, it's okay. If I'm irritable 24/7, how's that going to affect my life? Well, nobody's going to want to be around me. You know what I'm saying? My job's going to say, hey, we don't want them. Let's fire them. You know, my colleagues and my friends and my loved ones and my family, you know, who wants to be around that all the time? So it's really important to use this, to recognize it, and to recognize it so it doesn't become this chronic strain, so that it becomes an ebb and flow rather than an on-off switch, if you will. So let's talk about stress management. So some of you know I like stories. So we got one more story. So we got another story for you. So think about stress as if you woke up this morning. And you woke up this morning and you turned over and said, you know what? It's Saturday. I don't have to do anything. I'm not getting out of bed. I'm just going to hang out here a little longer. Like, okay. So you begin to do that. So you hang out, you de-stress, and a half an hour later, you look at the clock and I'm comfy here. It's warm under the covers. I'm staying a little longer. What starts to happen another hour later? It's now 10 o'clock in the morning. Now 11 o'clock in the morning. It's now 12 o'clock in noon time. You know, things start to happen. So after a little while, I forget who said it. It's like, I'm not doing anything. I start to feel guilty about it. You know what I'm saying? So I start to feel like I'm not being productive. So I start to have this internal stress coming on. I don't know about you, but by noontime, I'm sitting there saying, you know what? I got to use the restroom. I'm getting hungry. I want to go get me some breakfast. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, so I'll get up out of bed and I'll go downstairs to the refrigerator and I will see what's in there and get a bite to eat. And I open the refrigerator and I say, oh, shoot, there's no food in here. Well, I guess I better get myself over to the store and get some food so I can eat so I don't die. I get to the store and I realize, oh, shoot, I don't have any more money. So I guess I better go get a job so I can get some money so I can get some food so I can eat so I don't die. So you see what starts to happen here. This is called eustress. This curve going up is essentially the conversation that we actually need a little bit of stress in order to function. And that's what the definition of eustress is. It's the stress that gets us up and out of bed in the morning, gets us moving, gets us to enjoy life. Okay? So that's eustress. Now, notice that stress in this case is productive. Stress is our friend. You know, this is twice now I've already done this, and stress is my friend. I'm really think about this from a different perspective, right? So back to the comment before, how do we make it stay? We start repeating a little bit. So this is another way that stress is our friend. This is the stress killer myth, by the way. You know, people out there think, I got to get rid of my stress. I got to get rid of my stress. I got to get rid of my stress. And if you heard the last two slides, you might have started to think, oh my gosh, I got to get rid of stress. Stress is bad. Stress will make you have a heart attack. Stress will make you do this and that and the other thing, right? Stress will make you get colds and everything else under the sun. So how do I begin to change that perspective that I'm not trying to get rid of stress? I'm not trying to kill off all stress. I want my stress to be there. Now, we have this thing at the very top here. It's called, I think of that as peak performance. And if it goes anything beyond that, performance starts to go down, 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 down. This is when we start losing concentration, very stressed. We start having other symptoms. I get so sick that I need to take the day off of work, that sort of thing. So the goal is not to get rid of stress, but this is what we mean by stress management, that we want to try to keep the stress at kind of that target area there. We want to keep the stress where it's not too much, not too little, just right, like Goldilocks. So the principle is out of trying to find that balance, if you will. Notice that the target area is not right at the top, because we know that there's always going to be bumps coming on. Okay, so we want to plan ahead for the bumps that are going to happen by staying just a little bit to the left there, just a little bit away from that top. So we can't ride that peak performance 24/7, or we're going to tip over into symptoms on the right-hand side. So we want to stay at that target area where we're not just like bored sleeping in bed all day long, but not so much that we're, shoulders clenched, developing physical symptoms or behavioral symptoms or emotional symptoms. Okay. Now, how do we do this? So I've already said the word. Really, the principle of stress management is about managing, is about keeping it in a balance. It's not about getting rid of it. It is about finding that center, finding that balance. All right. So begin to think about how to do one of two directions. The one that we usually think of, again, that stress killer mindset, is remove the stressor. I don't know about you. Sometimes I can't remove the stressor. If I've got a test, I've got to get the test. If I'm working, I need to go to work. Build it. But so the other way to manage it is by building resiliency. Okay. The more I build resiliency, the more I build my stress muscles, the more I can withstand and juggle the challenges that arrive in life. Okay. So real important. So to begin to think about it in both of these directions, because sometimes the solution will be from one direction or from the other. Okay. So we spent the time a few moments ago talking about awareness. Once we have that awareness, now we begin to think about what do we do with it. We may choose to remove a stressor, or we may choose to build resiliency. So if there's a toxic person in our life, we may choose that that's a person that we don't want to have in our relationship, or a news channel that we don't want to watch, or a Facebook page that we just don't want to follow. You know what I mean? Some things we can make some decisions to remove certain elements from our lives. Other things we cannot remove from our lives. And so it's about how do we begin to build some strength so we can manage it better, even though it's the same stressors. Okay. Any questions? Slow me down, stop me if there's anything on this. I actually just covered a lot in these couple of slides. If not, I'm going to keep going. All right. What can we do to build resiliency over time? Oh, you are right on it. How do we build that resiliency over time? So that is right where we're headed. So perfect timing there. Throw in any other questions or thoughts along the way. I'm going to keep on going this. These are your 3 keys to stress management. Balance, we just explained. Awareness, we've also been talking about. And so building that resilience over time, the answer is going to be the 3rd key here, this practice. Okay, so this is the same thing as there was a comment before, that is, how do we keep this mindset? The answer again is practice. Practice, practice, practice. So once it's kind of like if you go to the gym and you lift some weights, you get a little stronger, and you get a little stronger, and you get a little stronger. Doing the practice will work. Okay, so whatever I practice, I'm going to get better at. If I practice stressing, then I'm going to get better at stressing, and the stress is going to get worse. If I practice removing stress or developing resiliency, I'm going to get better at those 2 tools, and so that's going to get better. Now, I said there's 3 keys. I still mean it. This is actually another whole talk into itself. If there's a lot of interest, I may pull this out someday soon. This one, that is, how do we build a practice? And one of the things that's really important in developing that practice so that we can do this resiliency over time is to partner with someone. So especially people who believe in us And bonus points if you can, really important, surround yourself with people who believe in you and even believe in you more than you do. You know what I'm saying? The more we can do that, the better off we are. But in any event, it's really important to have partners to help stay motivated and stay engaged in practices over time. Right? So, for example, sometimes people make a New Year's resolution that I'm going to go to the gym. And then 3 days later, they're no longer going to the gym. But you know what happens when I'm going to go to the gym? If I have a scheduled time with a personal trainer, a partner that's going to be there waiting for me, knowing I can do it, trusting that I can lift the weights and guide me, I'm more likely to show up. I'm more likely to stay consistent. You know what I'm saying? So exactly, accountability. Accountability gets kind of a rep sometimes, but it's like, you know, it is what it is. It's not about someone being mean to us, but if my best friend is sitting there waiting for me at the gym, I'm going to show up. You know what I'm saying? So it's really important when you think about developing a practice, and I'm just giving a taste here. When you think about developing a practice, think about being specific, think about being consistent, and think about partners and supports. And if you want to get really risky, if you want to get really daring, tell somebody about it. Tell somebody who believes in you. Say, hey, you know what? I've been really stressed. And so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this yoga thing. You know, everybody's talking about the yoga thing. So I'm going to go to this yoga class. Would you want to come with me? So first off, now you got somebody that's going with you. And even if they say no, you've just now set it up that someone who cares about you knows that you've made a commitment to do this. So they might follow up and support you and say, hey, how'd it go with that yoga class? You know what I'm saying? So whether or not they go with you, they can still support you in this practice just by declaring it, speaking it out loud to someone. And I'm belaboring this point for a reason, because as we build in a partner, someone who cares about it, as we've told somebody that we're going to do this, it makes it that much more likely that we're going to follow through with it. Okay, so the more we can do to set it up and support ourselves, so we're going to continue on this practice, so that we not only recognize the awareness, we bring that awareness again. So what if you went to a friend and said, hey, you know, there was this cool guy talking about stress, and this crazy Dr. Ken, you know, he's like, you know, it gave me this perspective. It's like water, you know, it's all around me, and I didn't think about it that way. And I was just really thinking about how that really relates to my work and my tests and all the stuff that I got to do. And notice what just happened there. By speaking it out loud, you've reinforced it for yourself. You've engaged a partner. You've been practicing it. So just by this one little thing, you've already made it exponentially more likely that you've learned and internalized that new skill and that new perspective. So you see how these skills start to fit together a little bit. And those of you that know me know I kind of do this, where I'm not quite repeating myself, but as we add layers to the practice, it makes it stronger, makes it more effective. And each one individual layer is not all that exciting, but when you start putting them together, it really makes a really powerful impact. Okay. All right, let's see what we got here next. Yes. So this is actually a one more awareness tool. You know, so I have a tendency, of course, to sometimes put more in than I can get to. So I sometimes speed up in my talking and slow down a little bit in my talking. But I'm going to try to still get to everything. And so I'm going to try to keep us pretty much on time, but I will stay over for questions certainly. So this is a stress diary. This is one model of a stress diary. So you print this out, you circle the day of the week on it. This is a excerpt just because otherwise the print gets really tiny on the screen. So this is Thursday as we're writing this. You might write down there that it is 6 o'clock and all of a sudden my stomach got upset. Okay. And then 7 o'clock came around, and right now, whatever symptoms you notice now, my stomach's doing better, my shoulders are a little more tense, though. You know, whatever it may be. 8 o'clock, no problems. 9 o'clock, no problems. 10 o'clock, having trouble falling asleep. Okay. So then you get to the next morning. 8 o'clock, no problems. 9 o'clock, I start feeling that tension in my chest and my shoulders, and I even feel it in my hands at 9 o'clock. Okay. So just begin to write down as much detail as you can. That's one of the reasons why I have it in this format. There's a little bit more white space there. What symptoms do you have? What's going on at that time in your day? What are you eating over the course of the day? So you can put a lot of details into this. And one of the other ways you can do this is a 1 page per week. And so you see symptoms every hour of the day over the course of a week long. But when you do it in that manner, the grids get really, really tiny. So it's a little bit harder to write in a lot of detail. Both work. So whichever way works for you, use it. I will tell you, this tool is a pain in the neck. It's annoying. It's a lot of detail. However, it is a really valuable tool. Okay, so I recommend folks to do it. If you're serious about this practice, do this for a week, maybe 2 weeks. You're not going to get a whole lot of new stuff after that, probably. But you'll begin to find out. So those things that you said were often, plot them on there about when they showed up in your week. When did those symptoms appear? When did they disappear? That's going to give you really valuable awareness information to let you know about your stress. And sometimes it is surprising. So for example, one of the most common themes that you'll start to see if you do this is 9 o'clock on Monday morning, all of a sudden my symptoms appear. 9 o'clock Tuesday, I got those symptoms. 9 o'clock Wednesday, I got those symptoms. 9 o'clock Thursday, I got those symptoms. 9 o'clock Friday, I got those symptoms. Saturday, I got no symptoms. What do you think's going on there? This is not a trick question. So you see how, what am I doing at 9 o'clock on every morning, by the way? So that old principle of, if I get stressed every morning when I start to go to work, that tells me something, okay? So if that's when my symptoms start to show up, what should I be doing at 8 o'clock every morning? I can start to plan in a resiliency tool for 8 o'clock every morning before I go to work. So I'm doing prevention before that symptom. Remember I said the symptom becomes our friend? So as I recognize when my symptoms show up, I can begin to get ahead of them and start acting in advance. By the way, 9 o'clock on Monday morning is the most common time to die for any reason among humans. We are the only species that does this, by the way. And obviously the anticipation assumption is that it has to do with work stress. Okay, I got the whole week ahead of me, all that piled on. So we are the only people that can do this, of anticipating stress, that internal and external work stress that we've got over time. Another common time is evening. So I'm coming home from work and all of a sudden I know that there's something else going on at home that I'm worried about. Okay, so whatever our thing is, this can be a useful tool to try to identify what the heck the stressor is and how to get ahead of it. So another example is there was a time when I was in grad school, and right around 2 p.m., I would get an upset stomach. So, my gosh, I got into a question. I'm like, well, what the heck is going on there? It's not every day, just once in a while. It's like, well, am I worried about the client that's coming up at that 2 o'clock or something? What's going on there? No, it's different clients. It's different work situations, different things going on. And so what is that about? And I couldn't figure it out. You know, most days I'm a pretty smart guy. So what is that about? And I didn't know. So I sat down and did this practice. And I jotted down when was I sleeping, when was I eating, what was going on at work, giving details, as many details as I could put in there. When did the symptoms show up? When did they not show up? And I eventually figured it out. And it was not anything that I had expected. Okay. So, you know, you'll never guess what it was. So I'm not even gonna ask it. But you can feel free to try and chat it into the box, but you're not gonna guess. It's okay. So what it was, you know, there was a place across the street from my office that had the most delicious Swedish meatballs. I loved them. They were awesome. And you know, you can't get that a lot of places. So I would go over there and get my lunch. And then by 2 o'clock, all of a sudden my stomach would get upset. And what I eventually figured out was that apparently, although they tasted delicious, the Swedish meatballs did not agree with me. Okay. And as soon as I stopped doing that, the stomach distress went away. So different stressors can be things that you are not expecting. Okay. We very often, it's kind of like, it's another variation of the how's the water thing. So I, being clever, thought about stress and I said, I must be stressed. So it must be a work stress thing. It must be a client that's whatever, you know, that I'm worried about. It must be a something. And it wasn't anything of what I expected. And so sometimes it's really important, again, to step outside of our expectations of what we think is happening in the world and to view the stress perspective from a little bit larger perspective. Okay, so begin to think about it from that mindset. All right, questions on that? All right, so we're going to do one more example here. I'm going to invite you to join me on an internal exploration for just a moment. So you don't have to, but I'll invite you to close your eyes for just the next minute and a half. There's nothing to see out here anyway. And so close your eyes for a moment, relax a moment, and you may begin to call to mind a memory of a time when you were annoyed about something. Perhaps someone cut you off in traffic, maybe something didn't go your way, somebody said something rude. And think about where you were when this situation occurred. What room were you in? What location were you in? Were you standing or sitting? Now check in with your body. Notice what's happening in your body. Was there tension in the shoulders? Was there tension in the head or the belly? What sensations are happening? Does the heart rate change? Do the muscles change in the hands or the knuckles or the shoulders or the feet? Begin to notice whatever you notice about this situation. Now, let that image go, turn the page, and think for a moment of another memory of a time when you were nervous about something. Maybe there was a test coming up or an interview coming up or a meeting that you were worried about that you wanted to be really successful at and you were hoping it would go really well. And think about what that's like. Notice where you were. Notice what's happening in the body, what sensations arise in the chest and the belly and the heart. Notice what the mind is doing. And then let that go, let that image go away, and turn the page and choose another memory of a time when you were happy. a time when you succeeded at something and you were feeling really proud, and whatever happened, somebody saw you and you knew you could do it, and you were successful. Notice how that feels in the chest, in the belly, in the heart. Right? Notice if there's a feeling of warmth, if there's muscle tension or muscle ease. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes again, come on back into the room. Now, feel free to throw something in the chat if you want. What did you notice there in that quick couple of seconds? Did anything change for you in these different moments, in these different memories? Okay. So you may begin to notice that in a few seconds, our body changed quickly. Exactly. Went from agitated, racing heart to calm. Notice the difference between the two memories. Perfect. So in seconds, our body responded. Okay. Now, we were still sitting here in a chair or wherever you are right now as we're talking about this, right? That failure or that success didn't actually happen. So a couple of important lessons here. One, our body doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. Let me say that again. Our body doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. If I think a worrying thought, my body starts reacting to it immediately right now as if that scary thing is happening. So when we are worrying about our future, our body immediately kicks into that stress response as if the tiger is in front of us right now. Okay. Lesson number 2. Our body responds in a certain way. So I'm not going to go deep into this, but you'll get the idea. Typically, when you are angry, you will probably get a similar response. Probably the same clenching shoulders. It may be different for each of you. Maybe the same clenching shoulder, the same racing heart, etc. Okay. When you are anxious, and it's very common, by the way, for anger to have that tense shoulders. It's very common for anxiety to have that upset stomach. It's in our language. So what do we talk about when we get angry? We get hot-headed. Okay. What do we talk about when we get anxious? We get butterflies in our stomach, right? These are words to describe the physical sensations that are going on that we label as emotion. Okay. So just as I said about the stress symptoms checklist, begin to recognize that my tense shoulders may be my anger, and my clenching my jaw may be my anxiety, and my headaches may be my grief. You know what I mean? So in a longer conversation that we could have, that we're not going to do tonight, but I'm just kind of pointing you to, there's more layers to think about this. That the symptoms that we have will likely reoccur, and they will likely be related to the same types of situations as we're triggering them for us. We've probably been practicing those symptoms for days, years, decades, and we can begin to practice the antidotes for them as well. Okay. So just as quickly as we let go of those thoughts and recall the happy memory, it's kind of like just changing the channel on a TV set. It's actually very easy, and you just did it in seconds. Okay. So when we sit with people and we say they're depressed, it's important for us to know that the miracle could happen in seconds. That transition is possible in seconds. The challenge is exactly the question that was asked earlier. Now that we recognize this, how do we make it stay? And of course, the answer is, as I said before, practice, practice, practice. Just now that you know how to do it, just turn. So if the channel accidentally changes back to that horror movie, just flip your channel back over to the Hallmark channel. It's okay, it's no big deal. It's easy. Once you know how to do it, just keep course correcting. Okay. All right. Our body responds to stress immediately. Be aware, we practice, and then just repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. And so that's why I spent that time talking about what a practice is, so you can begin to put it into a practice on a daily basis. So what are some things that you can do? And this looks like it's the old chart, but it's a new one actually. So what do I practice? Well, there are tons of different tools out there. And so if you typically get physical symptoms, you might, for example, start to choose some physical practices. So for example, breathing. Fastest way I can bring down anxiety is just simple, deep abdominal breathing. Okay. One of these days, I'm going to do a video of how to do that, spell that out and make it easy for folks. Progressive muscle relaxation. You'll have both of these described in my books. Actually, I do have an audio of that. If you go to the Manage My Meditation toolbox, you'll find a copy in there that you can get. It's audio, it's free. Yoga, weight training. So what's going to happen if I do weight training? My muscles are going to get tight and then they're going to be fatigued. And so I have no choice but to relax them. Okay. Weight training fatigues the muscles, so I can't carry that stress anymore. Okay. You see how these, many of the cyclical repetitive motion types of things, cycling, swimming, walking, you see how there's a wide range of physical interventions you can do if that's where you carry your stress, where and how you carry your stress. If you carry your stress with behavioral things, you can do things like prioritizing, planning, structuring, laughing, hugging a loved one, waking up a few minutes earlier so you're not stressing and racing. Take a hot bath, smile, playtime, dance, sing, et cetera, et cetera. Emotional tools, there's tons of these out there. Meditation, letting go, communication, assertiveness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a wide range of these tools, and we could spend hours talking about many of these and how to do these more effectively. Assertiveness training is another whole discussion conversation, for example. All right, keep an eye on time here. All right, so let's begin for a second here. So this is not a ending point. For mention for a moment here, next year, I will be starting out for those that would like to go this a little further, I'm gonna do a 6-week course. So it'll probably be also on the Thursday evenings, kind of this time slot. We'll cover different things like a session on stress, session on meditation, communications, emotional balance. And this is at a time where when we get there, I am going to be doing that with a, it's going to be a full $500. But for today, if anybody joins today or no later than tomorrow, this is pre-sale. I'm still doing some of the setup materials. It hasn't been put out to the public. So it would be only $150. If anybody wants to join, you're welcome. If not, no sweat. No matter what, if you are interested, just go to the link on the bottom there, and I can send that out later if that's helpful. But even if you don't want to do something like that, the same principle is really important to practice. Pick one of these tools and practice. If you're practicing on your own, that's great. If you want to practice with a partner such as me, who's going to be there with you and support you and say, hey, this is the tool for today. We're going to practice this and practice this over the course next week. That is, one of the ways to go. It would be Thursdays. I think we were looking at the second or third week in January. And they will also be recorded so that if you ever miss one, you can catch up afterwards. And you all know me, I'm really accessible. So, I'm always happy to chat afterwards or outside as well. If that's not for you, always other options. The other thing to think about there, by the way, is also next week, and I haven't posted this yet, next week, same bat time, same bat channel, I will be here again and I'm going to do the introduction to meditation. So I will walk you through the step-by-step how to meditate, how to get started, how to do that. By the way, that is, if I only had one tool, it would be meditation. So, and again, that is free. Just show up, we'll hang out, we'll chat again. So that is my favorite tool. If I only had one tool, that would be it. You know, I'm a toolbox person, so here's a whole range. If I only had one, it would be meditation. I will, like I said, I will walk you through step by step next week. If anybody can't wait until then, go back to my training website. It is unlocked for free, the Manage My Meditation Toolbox. And what you will find there is you'll get a copy of my book, the Manage My Meditation. It will also have audio recordings there of each of those tools. There's ones on breathing, one's on progressive muscle relaxation, recordings on a simple concentration exercise, and a growing meditation exercise. So again, just like tonight, I will walk you through step by step ways to approach these things, ways to look at it. The reason why meditation is my favorite is because, frankly, it's a really good emotional tool. It also has strong physical impacts and behavioral impacts. It's been found to be effective even for things like addiction and things like that, depression, as effective as medications without the side effects. Okay, so it is absolutely my favorite tool. So want to make sure I always deliver on what I'm saying. So the goals that we said, by the way, if anybody does join, I want, my goal is your success. I don't care. I'm not, you know, I get money other ways. If you are not happy, full refund up to like 30 days after the start of the course. So you can take most of the course. And if it's not working for you, if you're not feeling like you're getting what you need, let me know what you need. I'll be happy to work with you. But anyway, goals. We talked, how can I recognize stress in my life? Awareness of my personal symptoms. We did that stress awareness test. What is stress? We talked about the fight and flight response. The stress killer myth is that you can't remove all stress, nor do you want to. The 3 keys to stress management, again, were balance, awareness, and practice. And the stress management tool I wish I had learned earlier as meditation. I've been practicing for 20 years now. I wish that's one that I wish I would have learned in school. I wish I would have learned earlier, because it's one of those ones that even now it's become water to me, where it's become so comfortable and familiar that has become my norm. There's folks that say that insist, I have friends that insist that I don't sleep. And I assure you, I do sleep, and I sleep well. But when I practice my meditation, when I practice my good stress management tools, that is how you stay ahead of things. And so that's my favorite. Choose your own. If you like yoga, if you like journaling, so whatever you pick though, practice, set it up that I'm going to do a gratitude journal and write down 3 things I'm grateful for every single day. That consistency is important for the stress management practice, for the resiliency building. And you can build it by choosing some of the things off that menu in the different areas. If you need physical areas, if you need emotional, if you need mental, whatever it is you need, those are all there and great supports. Okay, so questions. I'm gonna take a quick sip of tea. Anything else? Did you get what you needed? Anything else I'm missing that you would need to feel complete tonight? Gratitude list journal, absolutely. The gratitude journal is, I know a lot of people, and I use it regularly. It's a really good way to practice in and of itself, as well as keep you going. And on the days when you feel scared or lonely or hurt, having that gratitude journal, it's like a stack there ready for you, reminding you of your worth. And so I circle back to that. So for this hour, I hope that I have been able to be that reminder of someone outside of you who cares enough and maybe thinks that you can do even more than you believe right away. And, I am here for you, whether it's in another lecture or email or whatever. If you haven't picked up already, I love this stuff, and my goal is your success. So whatever you need, I'm around. Absolutely. I mean, gratitude lists are such a good way to get out. And for that few seconds where you're writing, you are focused on, so think about the visualization exercise that we did. For that few seconds, you are just mentally embodying gratitude. And as a student, as a worker, as everything. So for that few seconds, I am not angry, I am not scared, I am gratitude. And so kind of tying it all together, the same practice of going through these things. 7-year breakup, feeling alone, like the gratitude list for sure. Absolutely. So, so what am I grateful for today? What has worked well? You'll find things that change over time. Absolutely. If it's helpful with the breakup issue, check out in my Manage My Emotions book, there's a chapter on letting go. So similar to that is also some things like letter writing or journaling to help identify. And when you're doing so, it also helps to move it out of my head and onto the paper, if you know what I mean. So really good practices. So you see how those I'm kind of laying out both principles there. The gratitude practice is resiliency. Something like journaling of the grief lets it go and moves it past, gets it out of the head and beyond. So each of these principles that we've been talking about has been really played out in a couple of ways here. So I will challenge you, and I'm rolling near the end here, but I am not kicking you off. I will challenge you though to one last thought of, with all that you've learned tonight, begin to notice what will you do in the next 24 hours that will be a little bit differently. Okay, and so just begin to raise your awareness. So this is, again, that theme that we started today. How do we put it into practice? We'll start with the next 24 hours. Just begin to see how well you can keep that perspective aware in your life and changing. Okay, so I am here with you now, and as long as you like to continue this journey with me, I'm here to support you. And if you don't already have, you probably do, contact information. If you've got my email. And if you're like me, I always think of really important questions about 4 minutes after we log off. So feel free to reach out afterwards. I'm accessible, and anything I can do to support, I am here for you. Okay. Any last thoughts, questions, concerns? Right. So I will simply then again say thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting with you this evening. Great discussion, great thoughts, and happy to continue on the conversation in any way that's helpful. All right. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Thank you. Have a good night.